Hello, my name is Kimmo, and Digizen is digital ID for extreme conditions. Here's Bayani. He's a father of 3 and doesn't have proper ID. The lack of ID means Bayani and his children are excluded from basic financial and social services. He can't even vote. To get an ID, Bayani would need to gather up way too many documents. And gathering all these documents is impossible task for Bayani and others who don't have any documentation. But Bayani is not alone. There's over 1 billion people in the world who don't have ID. They can't access services we take for granted. And they must not be left behind. For this, we created an inclusive digital ID. Here you see how it works. We are gathering up all personal information using standard Android device. Once the information is collected on step 2, we use existing regulated practices to verify the identity and sign everything digitally. In third step, we issue Digizen ID card instantly, and the best part is that it can be used immediately for services such as opening a bank account. And all of this can be done in offline without connectivity. So Digizen changes the task of getting an ID from an impossible thing to do to an easy thing. We reduce the time of getting an ID from months to minutes, and we reduce the cost by 10-fold. We are currently in legal process in Papua New Guinea to become legally accepted identification. For this, we have partnered up with the Central Bank of Papua New Guinea and Asian Development Bank. Our security is audited by PricewaterhouseCoopers. During the first year of operation, Digizen has generated $260,000 sales. And thanks for being cash flow positive, the company is 100% is owned by the founders. We are looking here €500,000 investment to accelerate business development. And if you have any contacts to relevant people in Pacific Islands or Africa, we'd love to talk to you. Digizen is ID for all. Now Bayani and 1 billion other people who don't have any identification have one less barrier to escape from poverty. Thank you.
Super important. At the heart of it, the question is how do you do the verification? I mean, that's the big problem, right? So for you, it's like a small bullet on your slide, but if you can explain how do you prevent fraud and have an idea that is valuable for KYC and things like that, and then also if you can just share how many ideas you already, like cards you've already issued.
Yes, thank you. So how we verify the identity. So we use their existing process that in most countries, also for example in the United States, if you lose your passport, you need to have someone to vouch for your identity. So usually it's people in power of trust or people who know you, they need to prove who you are. And this is existing regulated practice in most countries, and we are using that same process, but making it all digital and doing all those signatures digitally, making it more secure and better audit trail. Then second question was how many cards have we distributed so far. So currently we are in the process of becoming a legal ID in Papua New Guinea, and we have agreed with Papua New Guinea and Central Bank to launch pilot with 10,000 users mid next year.
I have a question regarding the your business model. Could you elaborate a little bit on how you see your kind of income coming in from them?
Yes, good. So our business model, it starts with sponsors. So currently there's huge demand for identification. So this is one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, to provide legal ID for all. So we are currently funded by Asian Development Bank, and we see that usually it's a sponsor development banks like World Bank or Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, who would finance the beginning of launching an ID. Then, to make it economically sustainable, we are building their business model so that the what we call the registry owner who owns the system, they can start selling ID verification to other customers. So for example, when a bank needs strong authentication, the bank would pay a small transaction fee to the ID owner, in this case the government.
Just sort of to touch on that, so you're talking about becoming legal in Papua New Guinea and recognised, and you were saying about just over 1 billion people who this applies to. What's the process and how long does it take for a government to recognise what you're doing and therefore unlocking that patent?
Yeah, so traditionally that process is very slow. However, there's now recognition that certain things need regulatory acceleration. So there's a mechanism called regulatory sandbox that we are using in Papua New Guinea, and this regulatory sandbox is being taken into use in 7 Pacific countries. And we expect that the World Bank and Asian Development Bank will roll out the regulatory sandbox process to more countries going forward. So we use that regulatory sandbox, and so far it seems that it takes about a year to go through that process for the country to decide that we need to change regulation to accept a digital ID. Because it's not only accepting the ID, but it's all the KYC regulation needs also update that they need to recognize that a digital identification is also legally accepted.
One more question, sorry. About the team, if you can share the experience, relevancy, and also why Papua New Guinea? I mean, why did you pick that place?
Good question. So we are a team of 4. We have all about 10 years work experience working in Reactor, Solita, and other companies, and I'm myself a serial entrepreneur. So my colleagues have designed digital ID for 2 major banks, and they have been working in the digitalization of the Finnish population registry. And why Papua New Guinea? This is more a coincidence. So everything got started in a hackathon organized by Asian Development Bank, where we won the digital ID track. And from that, people in Asian Development Bank got interested, and that has led Asian Development Bank to purchase services from Digizen.
One quick question. How does actually the process of attracting users work? So you just come to the city, go to the shopping mall and stand there and say, we can give you a digital ID, how you do inform people, etc.?
Yeah, so traditionally it works that people need to travel to a city and apply for an ID. They go back home and they travel again to a city and see if that ID is printed. This is very costly for people to use. So we reverse that so that we use agent networks. For example, in Papua New Guinea, we use partner banks, agents, and staff who are trained to do KYC and enrollment, and they will enroll people in their villages to the system. So we reverse the process. People don't need to travel, which is very costly for poor people. But actually the agent goes to a village and there enrolls the person and does everything paperless and digitally.
Thank you, Kimmo.
Thank you very much.
Next we have